It's non-stop humiliation under Sir Keir Starmer. The so-called special relationship just hit its most turbulent moment in decades. In an extraordinary escalation, US President Donald Trump publicly rebukes British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, questioning Britain's commitment, casting doubt on the strength of the transatlantic alliance, and delivering a line that stunned Westminster. He's no Winston Churchill. The comment landed like a thunderclap.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. For whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
For generations, the US-UK alliance has been described as unbreakable, forged in World War II, reinforced through the Cold War, and revived repeatedly in moments of crisis. But now, amid rising tensions over Iran, a visible crack has emerged, and it's widening. At the heart of the dispute is one defining question. Should Britain have backed America's military action against Iran? President Trump believes the answer is yes. Prime Minister Starmer believes the answer is no.
President Trump has expressed his disagreement with our decision not to get involved in the initial strikes. But it is my duty to judge what is in Britain's national interest. That is what I've done, and I stand by it. This government does not believe in regime change from the skies, and I thank him for his question. The lessons of history have taught us that it is important when we make decisions like this that we establish there is a lawful basis for what the United Kingdom is doing. That is one of the lessons from Iraq.
When the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iranian targets, London made a deliberate choice. Britain would not participate in offensive operations. Standing before Parliament, Starmer made it clear the United Kingdom, he said, was not involved in the initial strikes. That decision was intentional. Britain believes the path forward must be diplomacy, not escalation. But while the Prime Minister framed it as a responsible, measured stance, Washington saw something else. Hesitation, distance, even betrayal.
The US President Donald Trump has launched a stunning critique of his British counterpart Keir Starmer. The President claims the US-UK relationship is not what it was.
Behind closed doors, frustration reportedly boiled over. Trump signalled that the relationship between Washington and London was not what it was. That phrase alone sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. Because when an American president questions the strength of the US-UK alliance, the world listens. Yet Starmer did not completely shut the door. He confirmed that Britain would allow the use of UK bases for defensive operations to protect allied forces and regional partners from retaliatory Iranian strikes. That means British territory could still play a role in missile defence, intelligence coordination and air support, but not in launching attacks. That distinction, offensive versus defensive, is everything. To Trump, it may look like half-hearted solidarity. To Starmer, it's a line drawn in the sand. And Britain isn't alone. Spain has taken an even firmer position. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez reportedly refused to permit US forces to use jointly operated bases on Spanish soil for strikes on Iran. Madrid condemned the operations as dangerous and unjustified. Spain's foreign ministry went further, accusing the US and Israel of breaching international law and insisting that any military action must operate within the framework of the United Nations Charter. France followed a similar path. President Emmanuel Macron stated that Paris was neither informed nor involved in the strikes. He warned of grave consequences from further escalation and called for renewed diplomatic efforts. However, France stopped short of full disengagement. Paris moved air defence systems to Cyprus and deployed Rafale fighter jets to the United Arab Emirates to secure naval and air bases. Defensive positioning, not offensive participation. The pattern is becoming clear. Europe is not lining up behind Washington. Instead, it's hedging. Supporting regional stability while refusing to endorse a widening war. For Trump, this could represent more than a policy disagreement. It could signal a broader shift in global alignment. For decades, US presidents could expect near-automatic backing from key European allies during major military operations. From Afghanistan to Iraq, London in particular was often first in line. But this time is different. Starmer has framed his decision as one rooted in national interest. He has rejected the idea of regime change from the skies, signalling that Britain will not endorse military action aimed at toppling governments. That phrase alone carries weight. It evokes Iraq. It evokes Afghanistan. It evokes lessons learned the hard way. But Trump's criticism, especially the Churchill comparison, turns this into something personal. Churchill is more than a historical figure in Britain. He symbolises defiance, strength, wartime leadership. To suggest that Starmer falls short of that legacy is to challenge his resolve on the world stage. The political fallout could be immense. At home, Starmer faces pressure from opposition voices who argue that distancing Britain from Washington weakens deterrence and emboldens adversaries. Others praise him for resisting pressure and prioritising diplomatic solutions over military escalation. Across the Atlantic, Trump's supporters see Britain's hesitation as evidence that America must act decisively, even if allies waver. So what we are witnessing may be more than a disagreement over Iran. It may be the beginning of a recalibration of the Western alliance itself. The question now is whether this rift is temporary, a moment of tension during crisis, or the start of a deeper fracture between Washington and Europe. Because once trust is publicly questioned, restoring it is never simple. And this confrontation is only just beginning. If this were simply a policy disagreement, it might have stayed behind closed doors. But it didn't. When Donald Trump publicly declared that Britain's relationship with America is not what it was, it transformed a strategic dispute into a geopolitical spectacle. And when he added that Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill, the clash became deeply symbolic. Because Churchill represents wartime unity with America. He represents standing shoulder to shoulder with Washington against a common threat. Trump's implication was unmistakable. Britain is no longer standing shoulder to shoulder. Inside Westminster, the reaction was immediate. Government allies defended Starmer's position as measured and responsible. Britain, they argued, must avoid being dragged into another Middle Eastern war without a clear strategy, legal mandate, or exit plan. But critics saw weakness. They warned that distancing Britain from the United States at a moment of escalating tension risks undermining deterrence. If adversaries believe the West is divided, they may be more willing to test its resolve. Starmer, however, has drawn a deliberate line. He rejected what he called the logic of regime change from the skies. That phrase wasn't accidental. It was a reminder of Iraq in 2003, when Britain joined America in a controversial war that reshaped the region and haunted British politics for years. The shadow of Iraq still lingers over every military decision in London, and Starmer knows it. He has framed his stance as one rooted in national interest, legality, and diplomacy. Britain will defend allies. It will protect regional stability. It will allow defensive use of its bases. But it will not sign up to offensive operations aimed at dismantling Iran's leadership or infrastructure. Meanwhile, across Europe, a pattern of caution has emerged. Spain has refused to allow American forces to launch attacks from joint bases on its soil. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez condemned the strikes as unjustified and warned against breaching international law. France, under Emmanuel Macron, has also kept distance from the offensive campaign. Paris emphasized it was not informed in advance and called for intensified diplomatic efforts. Yet France simultaneously deployed air defences to Cyprus and Rafale fighter jets to the UAE, reinforcing protection for allies without endorsing escalation. This careful balancing act reveals something larger. Europe is attempting to walk a tightrope. On one side, maintaining NATO unity and deterring further Iranian retaliation. On the other, avoiding direct participation in a conflict that could spiral beyond control. For Washington, this hesitancy may feel like abandonment. For Europe, it feels like caution learned through experience. But beneath the surface lies an uncomfortable truth. Trust appears strained. The special relationship between the US and UK has survived Suez, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. It has endured leadership clashes and strategic disagreements. Yet rarely has an American president publicly questioned Britain's resolve in such stark language. Diplomats on both sides are reportedly working behind the scenes to cool tensions. Military cooperation continues. Intelligence sharing remains intact. But rhetoric matters. When alliances are tested, words can deepen divides. And Trump's words were sharp. He has built much of his foreign policy on strength and decisiveness. From his perspective, hesitation invites risk. If Iran perceives weakness among Western allies, he argues, it could embolden further aggression. Starmer sees it differently. He believes that unchecked escalation risks a broader regional war, one that could draw in Gulf states, disrupt global energy markets, and ignite further instability across Europe. Oil prices have already shown volatility. Security alerts have risen. NATO systems are on heightened readiness. The stakes are enormous. And politically, both leaders are calculating carefully. Trump projects force and demands alignment. Starmer projects restraint and demands legitimacy. Each believes he is protecting his nation's interests. But here's the deeper question. Is this simply about Iran? Or is this about a changing global order, one in which European powers are increasingly willing to assert independence from Washington's military decisions? For decades, America led and Europe followed. Now, that dynamic may be shifting. If Britain continues to resist direct involvement, it could signal a new era in transatlantic relations. One defined less by automatic solidarity and more by selective cooperation. And if Trump continues to pressure allies publicly, the diplomatic temperature could rise further. Because alliances are not only built on shared values, they are built on mutual respect. And right now, respect appears strained.